Answer before I reveal. Can you score 5 out of 5 again? Welcome everyone to today's session. We're diving into the MPPSC SET Economics practice, Part 2. I'm excited to guide you through this, and I hope you're ready to test your knowledge. This is the first slide, so I'll keep it brief. We'll cover key concepts to help you excel in your exam preparation. Let's get started and make this session both engaging and informative. Let's take a moment to think for 5 seconds. Now, as we explore the concept of the break-even point, it's important to understand some key relationships. First, when total cost equals total revenue, we reach that break-even point. That's the point where the business is neither making a profit nor incurring a loss. Next, we see that variable costs equal fixed costs in certain scenarios, which can help us analyze different cost structures. Also, total revenue might be equal to variable costs alone in some cases, but that usually indicates that we're just covering our variable costs, not our fixed costs. And if total revenue equals fixed costs, that's a different situation altogether. But the main idea here is that the break-even point is that specific level of output where total revenue just covers all the costs, both fixed and variable. It's a critical concept because it tells us the minimum sales volume we need to avoid losing money. Understanding where this point lies helps us make better decisions about pricing, production, and planning for growth. So, at this point, the firm is neither making a profit nor incurring a loss. In other words, profit equals 0. This is a critical point because it tells us that total revenue exactly matches total cost. When this happens, we say the firm is at its break-even point. The key idea here is that the break-even point occurs when total cost equals total revenue. This is the moment where the firm covers all its expenses but doesn't generate any profit. Understanding this helps us see how businesses analyze their performance and determine the level of sales needed to stay afloat. So remember, the correct answer here is D, which states that total cost equals total revenue at the break-even point. Alright, so let's walk through the stages of production in relation to marginal product, or MP. When MP is infinite, which is stage IV, we're dealing with a situation that's not really sustainable in the long run. It indicates extremely high productivity, but it's more theoretical than practical. Moving to stage III, where MP is less than 0, this tells us that adding more input actually decreases total output. This is a sign that we've gone beyond the optimal point and are experiencing diminishing returns. In stage II, the key point is that the average product, or AP, is still less than MP. Here, MP is decreasing but remains positive, so output is still increasing at an increasing rate, just at a decreasing rate. Finally, in stage I, the scenario is where AP is greater than MP. In this initial stage, both AP and MP are increasing, and the production process is most efficient. The optimal production point generally lies in this stage, where MP is at its maximum and the firm is making the best use of its inputs. So, to answer the question about the normal production function's optimum stage, it's typically in stage I, where the conditions are most favorable for efficient production. Now, let's focus on stage II, which is often referred to as the optimum or rational stage of production. In this stage, the firm operates most efficiently, meaning it's producing at the most cost-effective level. You'll notice that the average product, or AP, starts to fall during this stage. However, what's important is that the marginal product, or MP, is still positive but gradually declining. This indicates that, while additional units of input still add some output, the extra contribution from each new input is decreasing. In essence, stage II is the ideal point where the firm balances input and output efficiently. It's crucial to understand that the correct characterization of this stage is when AP is less than MP, which might seem counterintuitive at first, but it reflects the ongoing productivity dynamics within the production process. So, to clarify, stage II is the rational stage where the firm makes the most efficient use of resources, even as AP declines. This is the stage where decisions are optimized to maximize profit without the inefficiencies that occur in the other stages. All right, let's think carefully about producer's surplus and what it really represents. On this slide, we've got a few key concepts to consider. First, we see the idea of excess of total revenue over variable costs, which is important because it shows how much revenue is left after covering the variable expenses. Then, there's the excess of total revenue over total costs, which indicates profit, the amount the producer actually gains after all costs are paid. Next, we have the excess of total costs over total revenue, which would mean a loss, an important point to recognize. And finally, total revenue from sales, which is the starting point for understanding producer's surplus. Producer's surplus can be defined as the difference between what producers are willing to accept and what they actually receive, or more simply, the extra benefit producers get when they sell at a market price above their minimum acceptable price. Throughout this presentation, keeping these concepts clear helps us understand how producers make decisions and how the market functions. So remember, the core idea here is that producers' surplus measures the benefit producers gain when market conditions favor them. It's a key part of understanding overall economic welfare. Now, on this slide, we're looking at what producers' surplus actually is. Essentially, it represents the extra earnings a producer makes over and above the minimum supply price. In other words, it's the profit they gain once their costs are covered. The key formula here is producers' surplus equals total revenue minus total cost. Think of total revenue as all the money the producer earns from selling their product, and total cost as everything they spend to produce it. To clarify, the correct answer here is option C, which is the excess of total revenue over total cost. This excess is what we call producer's surplus. It's an important concept because it helps us understand how much benefit producers gain from market transactions beyond just covering their costs. Connecting this to the overall theme, understanding producers' surplus helps us analyze market efficiency and the benefits that arise when producers can sell at a price higher than their minimum acceptable level. It's a crucial part of our broader discussion on market dynamics and welfare. All right, let's talk about what excess capacity under imperfect competition really means. When we see excess capacity, it's essentially the situation where firms are not producing at their maximum potential. Now, this usually happens because of market imperfections, like limited competition, which prevents firms from operating at their most efficient level. On this slide, we've got a few options, but the correct answer is that excess capacity refers to the gap between the optimum output and the actual output. Think of it this way: the optimal level of production is where costs are minimized and efficiency is maximized. However, due to market imperfections, firms often produce less than this optimum, leading to excess capacity. This concept is important because it highlights inefficiencies in markets with imperfect competition. Firms aren't utilizing all their resources fully, which can lead to higher prices for consumers and less overall economic efficiency. So, when we talk about excess capacity, we're really addressing the difference between where firms could be and where they actually are, an important point to consider in understanding market dynamics. And that's why choosing the right option here is crucial, because it helps us grasp the core issue of inefficiency in such markets. So on this slide, we're talking about what we call excess capacity. Basically, this refers to the gap that exists when the actual output a firm produces is less than the optimal or most efficient level of output. What this means is that the firm isn't operating at its minimum average cost, which is where it would produce most efficiently. Instead, it's producing less than that, leading to unused capacity. In the context of monopolistic competition, this gap is quite typical. Firms have some market power, but not enough to produce at the lowest possible cost. The key point here is understanding that this difference between the optimal level of output and what the firm is actually producing is what we call the excess capacity. It highlights inefficiencies and shows there's room for more production, but for various reasons, the firm isn't reaching that optimum. So remember, this gap is a crucial concept in understanding how firms operate under monopolistic competition and why they often have some unused capacity. And now, we arrive at our final question. This is a great opportunity to test your understanding of the key thinkers we've discussed. So, who propounded the theory of second best? Was it T. Satovsky, R. G. Lipsey, and K. J. Lancaster, I. M. D. Little, or Kenneth Arrow? Remember, the theory of second best is a fundamental concept in economics that challenges the idea that achieving optimal conditions in all areas is always the best strategy. Instead, it suggests that if one optimal condition can't be met, sometimes relaxing other conditions can actually improve the overall outcome. This theory has significant implications for policy design and economic modeling. Think about which of these thinkers is most closely associated with that idea. Take a moment to consider your answer, and let's see if you can identify the correct person behind this influential theory. This slide discusses a modification to the classic Pareto optimality concept. Essentially, it highlights that if one of the Pareto conditions can't be met, then trying to satisfy all the others might not actually lead us to the best possible welfare outcome. It's a crucial point because it shows the limitations of the traditional Pareto framework when real-world constraints come into play. This idea is encapsulated in the theory of second best, which was introduced back in 1956 by R. G. Lipsey and K. J. Lancaster. The theory suggests that when a particular optimality condition is broken, fixing the others might not improve overall welfare. In fact, it could even make things worse. So the key takeaway here is that in complex economic systems, achieving a perfect Pareto optimal state might be impossible, and sometimes accepting certain imperfections or trade-offs is necessary. This concept ties into our broader discussion on how real-world policies and interventions often need to account for such constraints, rather than aiming for an idealized, perfectly optimal outcome. Let's wrap up with a quick reminder to stay connected and keep learning. If you found this session helpful, make sure to subscribe for daily MPPSC SET Economics MCQs at Commerce 360 Biter Pale Jane. It's a great way to reinforce your knowledge and stay updated with new questions. Also, I'd love to hear your scores, so comment below and tell me how many you got right out of 5. Your participation keeps us motivated and helps create more engaging content. Thanks for being part of this journey, and I look forward to seeing you excel in your exams.